I got to tell you, though, this is the tough one about this time of year. You really care about the stuff that's coming at a camp. You really care about the stories about your team specifically and what they're doing and, yeah, who's getting the good reps and who's looking solid, who's staying healthy. Where is their drama? Is there drama? I'm a Seahawks fan. I'm already trying to get like buzzed up about the Mike McDonald stuff, and all of a sudden we've got a D line that's like flying around and actually doing things. So nice. So nice. Those things are great. The preseason games, though, yeah, this has been trending for a while now. This whole, hey, they mean less and less and less. They tried to actually trick us Canadians into buying expensive preseason tickets. If you recall, the NFL was kind of like shuttling up these horrible preseason games. They even had one in like, God, where was it? Was it Winnipeg? They had one in like Winnipeg or Saskatchewan where the field dimensions weren't even the real field dimensions. This was like right before the pandemic because that was the NFL's last gasp. That was their last hurrah at trying to trick us into the preseason actually mattering or there being really anything worth watching because they would bring it up to Canada and go, hey, you stupid Canadians, you don't know anything about this, do you? Buy these tickets at full rate. Come watch the Oakland Raiders play a preseason game with pylons instead of an actual field. Hey, sorry, we couldn't get the end zone up to par, which I also don't really understand. We have football stadiums here. They're bigger. Like, if anything, it should have been easy to figure that out. Either way, once that was done, once we as Canadians said, yeah, we actually watch football here, we're not paying $500 to go to a NFL preseason game with the Raiders, I think it was over for trying to convince anybody to really watch these games. But then there's the rookies, right? That's it. That's pretty much the only thing I can think of, unless you're a diehard fan, right? You're watching these preseason games. If you're a diehard and you really care about who's going to be on special teams or what, like, who's going to be your fourth cornerback, everything else happens in training camp. Everything else is all you're reading is, hey, what's happening in the camp? What's the story out of there? Because, yeah, I don't know. It used to feel like there was at least a couple of drives you would watch. It'd always be like the third preseason game, right? It was, you get the first half with the starters, and this is going to be the walkthrough. The only thing that I can't really understand is that for years now, coaches keep talking about how they don't feel prepared, and every team is always looking for an edge. And why there aren't more teams that try to now take advantage of the preseason so that they do feel sharper. I don't know why that's not a thing. Anyways, Nick Shook, writer for NFL.com. He's great. Joins me now. What's up, Nick? How we doing, buddy?
Good. I can answer all of your musings or all the time that you spend just thinking about why does this exist?
Yeah,
about the preseason, which is going to end up inevitably being shorter.
Yeah, that's it. But it's like, why not? The whole getting shorter thing is just now, to me, why have it at all? Like, we used to at least have a couple of dry runs, and like I mentioned, there was that third preseason game, and now it's like you give a couple of the starters a drive. I was even seeing that the Bears are considering not even playing Caleb Williams anymore, that even some of the rookies now, they're going, we don't really need this guy to get any more reps. And I'm like, if we're not doing it with the rookie quarterbacks, then who is this for?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that concern because sometimes you just know, though. Like Caleb Williams, know is not going to get any use out of these games other than, taking the live bullets that he had spoke about prior to the Hall of Fame game. And if he wanted that and they want to get him that, they can do that. But the risk of injury that you run, we just saw with JD McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings. His whole rookie season's done now because he suffered a torn meniscus in the game in which he shined and played a considerable amount of that game because he's a rookie that is still trying to battle for a job. You run the risk of getting hurt no matter what. Every time you take a step on the field, whether it's practice or whether it's actually, a football game, a preseason game. So it's not necessarily that you're going to avoid all injury. It's just, you're trying to minimize the risk factor, and it always exists. But I also do think that there is value in playing in some of these games.
Yeah.
It's even from the fan perspective. The fan perspective is, look, you get a first look at a player who you can just tell. You can just tell if that guy's going to make an impact. I think about Jalen Wright with the Miami Dolphins and his, a little bit of contribution against the Atlanta Falcons in their first preseason game this year. You can go all the way back to Victor Cruz tearing it up in the preseason and earning himself a job with the New York Giants and setting himself on a long course.
Listen,
there's a lot there.
Yeah, I'm a Seahawks fan. I think the preseason matters more to me than anybody because it's like where Russell Wilson emerged. It was, oh my God, are you seeing this? Is this guy going to take the job? Even this year, yeah, I saw there's some Byron Murphy highlights floating around, and I went, oh, I knew we got the steal. Oh my God, Mike McDonald got this guy. It is good for that tiny little bit of fan dreaming. Here's where I guess I'm at with it. One is I don't ever want to hear coaches complain anymore about not being up to speed or that the preseason, like they didn't get enough time with it because like you have it. It's there. Of course, there's a risk that the players get hurt, but there's more practices, there's more training camp time, but I'd love to see every year the amount of training camp injury versus preseason game injury because like I'm at a bit of a loss thinking about like the actual preseason game that resulted in catastrophic injuries or like the list of them. Most of them happen at practice.
Yeah, and that's actually was going to be my next point too, is the fact that a lot of the reason that these teams, come into the regular season with a lot of rust, it's not because of a lack of preseason games or lack of participation. It's because they can't practice the way they used to because of the way that it's been collectively bargained. They can't, run 2-a-days anymore, and they can't hit nearly as much in practice as they used to. And talk to any of the old heads, talk to any of the vets that don't play anymore. They'll all say the same thing. They say it gets softer, and that these guys end up less prepared for it. So it's a combination of it, but it's also, it's an example of what happens when you, collectively bargain an agreement between a players' union and a league, and this is where they're at. And instead, we see the first few weeks as a bit of a training ground as they get up to speed.
Dude, there's nothing that when I have a quiet moment, I feel older than when I watch the older players talk about how the league is getting softer. Like whenever there's a Tom Brady clip now, right, where he starts talking about how the league isn't as good and how all the guys stink now, and that he always does it through the lens of defensive players. He's never like Peyton Manning was so great compared to other. It's always Ray Lewis that he invokes and other guys like that, and that they've made the rules so that it's sloppy. And I just sit there like nodding so hard. I'm just like, yes, he's speaking to me. Like I feel like I'm at like an inspiring political rally where I'm like, this is everything to me. Like I understand. I'm with you, Tom Brady. Despite me hating Tom Brady his whole career, all of a sudden he's just like a pastor to me where I'm just like, yes, preach, Tom Brady, preach. Then sitting there and realizing, oh yeah, you're so old that all you're doing is glorifying the good old days, the olden days, and you're that person now. Like you're there. You're basically just feeding into the Tom Brady PR machine because you're old. Like that's it. That's all you're doing. I love the old head stuff.
Music was better back then, and the football was better back then. And back then they didn't wear pads, and that's tale as old as time.
Yeah,
there are good and bad things to I think the way the game has evolved. For sure.
Of course. Okay, so actually, before I move on to some of these things, just because you brought up JJ McCarthy and that injury, gotta say, are we sure? It was a big story because it was the first rookie quarterback who's going to miss the entire season, or first round pick that's going to miss the entire season since 1967. Like it's a very rare thing. He made this beautiful throw in the preseason, and everyone was like, "Look at this guy! He hangs in the pocket. He's so tough." And if you're a Vikings fan, obviously you've gone quite a while without an exciting quarterback. Like I don't think Kirk Cousins. There was too many. There was a lot of jerseys, but I don't know how many kids like idolize Kirk Cousins, want to grow up and be Kirk Cousins. This kid represented something different, something new. So I understand like the fan base heartbreak element of it. But now that we've got a little separation from it, don't you think we kind of overplayed this? Like the plan apparently was always to play Darnold. I'm sure the leash wasn't extraordinarily long. It probably wasn't like, hey, this guy's got guaranteed 8 games or guaranteed 10 games in the season. But yeah, the Addison injury turns out to really be kind of nothing. And now there was a ton of buzz that Darnold was like clearly outplaying him, is clearly at a different phase of his career. JJ McCarthy was likely to sit the entire year, which is a lot of observation. Now that we're a little separated from it, did we really overplay the story? Are the Vikings fine? Are the Vikings just what they were going to be anyway?
Well, that's the thing. The beauty in this whole thing is that we won't ever know because, I mean, we might know next year, but within this lens of this year, we won't know. And all we have to go off of is JJ McCarthy throwing the 2 touchdown passes. Yeah, he threw a pick too, but we don't want to talk about that because he made a bunch of nice, really, really nice, impressive throws. He looked better than anybody expected him to look. And that's basically the last, example that we had to go off of was the fact that he shined in preseason and it just increases the allure and makes everybody fascinated and intrigued and want to watch the Vikings. And now that's gone because this is a kid who won a national championship. He was somebody that a lot of people, including myself, thought he might be overdrafted. And I was pleasantly surprised to see him do very well, pretty well in that first preseason game. And then all of a sudden it comes to a crashing halt, right? And you can't see it for the rest of the year because there's no better time than right now with optimism season, at its peak. It's everybody's got the same chance as every other team, and that includes JJ McCarthy in making his own career in Minnesota. And now he's going to have to wait until next year. So, yeah, we were probably going to see Sam Darnold, start the season as QB1, but there was some allure even to the remaining preseason games of can JJ McCarthy close the gap before the season starts, and now that's gone.
I do think that it's the perfect storm of it's the preseason where there are so few narratives really coming out of the games, where people mostly do want to see the rookie quarterbacks. Like I wouldn't have watched preseason football last night. The only reason I did is because Drake May was playing, and I went, oh right. If that was just Kenny Pickett, I wouldn't have cared. I was not like, I want to see what Kenny Pickett looks like in an Eagles uniform. Oh, good completion percentage, doesn't score any touchdowns, and ends the game, and you go, you didn't really do anything. Yeah, like that's the Kenny Pickett experience. I get it. I'm already there. I wanted to see Drake May, and he's running the football in. He scores a touchdown, and I go, that's kind of exciting that I got to see Drake May run a touchdown in the future of the Patriots. I got to see Drake May throw some balls down the field. So I get the J.J. McCarthy thing, but also that it's a cursed franchise, it's a tortured franchise. And so whenever anything happens to groups like that, then we really kind of spin out with them. I wonder if the same thing would have happened to Drake May, how much we would be doing content-wise off of Drake May, knowing that he's not going to play this year, that he's likely going to sit most of the season behind Jacoby Brissett.
That's actually an interesting way to look at it. I didn't quite think about that. And I'm somebody who's based in Cleveland, so I understand that.
Yes, you know how it is. Whenever something happens to you guys, it's like, here we go. And everybody circles the wagons and gets it all frothing at the mouth to rip down on the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, yeah. I get texts even now if it's, things that are relatively innocuous or just minor. And then, here it goes again. I'm like, relax, guys. You all need to calm down. So, I think you're right. I mean, that's a good point that, look, the Vikings fans have a reason to feel jaded and be ready to, just want to panic and say the world is ending and everything else because their rookie quarterback that they were so excited about seeing is now not going to play this year. But I also think it's a case-by-case basis with teams. I think if that had happened to Bryce Young last year, the same thing would we would have had an even stronger reaction. The number one overall pick goes down before the regular season even starts, and you have people being like, ban preseason, don't let them play in these games. This is why they shouldn't play. So I think that there's still value in it and everything else. But, I also understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and again, to get close to the Browns fan thing, root for the Leafs. That's our tortured team. And there's also a large part of every one of these tortured fan bases that I swear they enjoy the bad thing happening to them. That they're like, here we go. It's always us. That's their entire identity as a sports fan. And so that even becomes a bigger thing with the J.J. McCarthy thing. It was like, and just cancel the season. See you next year. And you're like, this kid wasn't even going to play. He wasn't even meant to play. The season is still on. The team is fine. We lost a cornerback. I was like, okay. I was like, who is this corner? Most people list him as they lost a cornerback, like the guy that got injured. Obviously not the guy that ended up dying. But they're like, we lost this guy to injury. I'm going, I don't know who this person's name is. And you keep writing cornerback, not his name, because I don't think anybody knew who that guy was. Anyways. Okay, so it is preseason. Well, you've kind of crushed it. But what is the story this weekend that you're most looking forward to seeing how it continues to play out?
Honestly, I wanted to see some of it last night with Drake May just because the vibes have not been good out of Patriots camp regarding him so far. So, that was probably at the top of my list, and we already got it last night. The Caleb Williams experience, we'll see if that continues. Jaden Daniels continues to take steps forward. I mean, it's all rookie quarterbacks. It's rookie quarterbacks, and it's other key contributors that I saw glimpses of that I want to see more of. But it starts at quarterback. It undoubtedly does. I would like to see if, how Stetson Bennett handles some of his time with the Rams, because he threw 4 picks last week, but he also threw the game-winning touchdown, and that's the thing that everybody remembers. So can he figure that out and maybe settle into a roster spot with the Rams, because right now he's still pretty far down on the depth chart. So it's pretty standard fare when it comes to the preseason. It starts with all those rookie quarterbacks. So I gotta see the Commanders finally let Jaden Daniels, stop forcing him through these baby steps, and just be like, look, all right, you're our starter. We're not going to go through every single small portion of this process, and kind of go from there and see who do I care about most. I also would really like to see, the Raiders, either Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell, separate one from the other, because supposedly this defense out there is pretty good, according to people that I've talked to in Vegas. And I need to see them figure out quarterbacks so they can balance out the ability between the two units and, get this in line before the season starts.
So I'm with you. It's clearly the quarterback battle stuff, but to me, it's always the ones that I'm more curious about are the ceiling plays or the drama plays, right? So, like with Stetson Bennett, I'm like, can he make a roster? Sure, but really the Rams season is still going to ride on the shoulders of Matthew Stafford, right? And even when I was watching Drake May yesterday, I went, okay, it's nice to see him. And, I was reading a lot of the same stuff too. And Patriots camp people being down on him. Like, is he even going to be the number 2 quarterback on the depth chart? Is he getting outplayed by the other? You're like, okay. He's still the guy that they have a ton invested in. And he's still the guy that a year from now is going to be the starter of this franchise. If anything was to happen to Jacoby Brissett, I would imagine that he's going to get in those games. The McDaniels stuff, I'm like, yeah, you're going to get a long runway. You're the guy. They're going to throw you out there. They're going to let you play. The most interesting ones to me are the ones where there's drama. And that's why, for me, the top of the pile is the Atlanta Falcons. Because Penix came out and he threw the ball like Michael Penix throws the football. And I can't get over thinking this is so. Like, I root for the Seahawks. I also root for the University of Washington football program. One of the underlying Penix things, or probably underrated Penix things, was how much his teammates loved him, and that this is a younger guy who's coming in with a younger team full of young, awesome weapons. And I'm guessing that he is hanging out with these guys and having a good time with these guys, and that his teammates adore him. And I know Kirk Cousins is a popular dude, and but it'll be a very different relationships. And if Penix comes out again this weekend and is throwing the ball around the yard and looks great and looks ready, I am curious that for a situation where Kirk Cousins was surprised by the pick, that, we've got a guy who's, I think, 24 years old in Penix, who's an older player, who's a ready now player. If this actually can evolve into the new version of that Russell Wilson story I talked about, where it is the rookie incumbent, there is a quarterback that they signed to a big money deal, but that the conversation starts to get louder and starts to dominate coming out of the weekend. Yeah,
I think the one key difference between those two situations is the fact that Kirk Cousins, a lot more money, a lot more demonstrated success than Matt Flynn ever had before he went to the Seahawks. Yep. But I do see the allure in it. Watching Penix live last week, and the way he threw the football, you're right. He threw it like the way Michael Penix does, which is using his live arm to throw a little bit off platform and maybe not completely set with his feet, to squeeze balls into fairly tight windows, and keep the ball moving in the short amount of time that he played. That's one of the ones that I left week one thinking I want to see them give him like a half or more of a preseason game and really give an example of what you have on this roster behind Kirk Cousins, because I was a big fan of Penix going back to his days at Indiana before, he suffered all those injuries and ended up transferring to Washington. And yet I still kind of need to have it shown to me that you're ready for this. And, if Kirk does have health issues, then it's obviously going to be a controversy. But right now is otherwise the only time we're really going to get a good look at him for at least this year, and maybe into next year too. So if you're ever going to start that train where, hey, we signed Kirk to all this money, but we're actually going to succeed him with Michael Penix a lot earlier than we thought. It starts right now. It starts in these next 2 weeks. So we'll see. It's definitely going to be intriguing because I just loved watching him play in college. Yeah,
that's the thing. You can't throw him out on a field and not be enamored by the arm, and also just the way he carries himself, and he's an aesthetically pleasing player. He's also your first round pick. And again, as much as you got Kirk Cousins, and you mentioned the track record of success, it's not like, he's showing up to training camp with all these Super Bowl rings, right? He's Kirk Cousins. I can't think of a guy that was set up for so much failure in terms of the way that some of his younger teammates would perceive him, but also the fan base. Like Penix goes out there and he balls out, and like what fan is going to be on? We need to go with Kirk Cousins time island. Like that's not a thing. I can't imagine being a Falcons fan and being on that side of things. And so there's part of me that's almost like conspiracy theory where I say maybe they don't want to play Penix a ton in the preseason because they want to limit those looks and say we can't make this a bigger distraction than, we've already self-created.
I think they would be doing themselves a disservice if they didn't play him very much. I'd fully expect him to play a lot more this week than did last week, and we'll see what happens in week 3 because that's just going to allow them to get the longest look. And I think the moment they made the pick of Penix, they put themselves in a situation where they're going to have to deal with, critique and people calling for him over Kirk Cousins. Like they made this bed, they know they have to lie in it now. So I wouldn't expect them to limit his time because of that. It would be funny if that did end up happening just because it would add to the drama. But look, they got to be prepared because Kirk's not going to play the preseason. And if Kirk doesn't come back from the Achilles injury, at full strength or whatever, because we haven't really seen him, they have to be ready behind him. So getting Penix more reps is only going to be beneficial, even if they have to hear the noise in the short term.
Yeah. You're right. That's the right move. I can't get over the line of thinking of, we think you were good enough to forego taking any other talent at this high in the draft. But then also, you're 24. We want to sit you down. We want you to watch. He's like, I'm ready to play. I'm ready to go. Anyway, the other one is again. So I like the quarterback drama. I like the ones where the jobs are up in the air and that there's at least a little bit of a ceiling play. What's your read on the latest with the Steelers? Because there first seemed to be a little bit of Fields buzz, like, oh, his teammates really love him. And then now it's completely gone. Like he played a preseason game. He didn't score touchdowns. He wasn't looking like spectacular. He looked like Fields, but he moved the ball on some drives. And then coming out of that game, everything I was reading was just immediately like, yeah, this is Russell Wilson's team and he's going to be starting and blah, 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 blah. Like we were right back to where it first began when Wilson signed there.
Yeah, and that wasn't going to change unless Fields went in there and lit it up. And he didn't really get that much playing time to get an opportunity to light it up anyway. It's funny because the first couple weeks of training camp, Russell Wilson's dealing with a lower body issue. Suddenly he can't participate. All the reporters are watching him on the sideline, or as he's, dressed for practice, but he's getting maybe 1/3 team rep. They're just watching with bated breath. They can't wait to tweet out that, oh, he's only taking reps with the third string. Everybody pay attention. This is controversial. And then after Fields goes out and still looks a lot like Justin Fields in a preseason game, which again kind of speaks to the value of preseason games. Now we're back to square one. And I think that's the Steelers trying to get, the whole narrative kind of under control as they enter a season in which, Russell Wilson's going to be under a microscope from week 1. And I don't know. I can't project and tell you if he's going to be good or not because the sample size we've had over the last few years, not just with Denver, but his tail end with Seattle as well, was just not very good. And we're at the point where if you look at the whole situation, I personally think that they're never going to get the results that they anticipate. But what are the results that they believe they were going to get when they signed him? Do they just want somebody who's going to be better than Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and Mitch Trubisky, or do they want old Russell Wilson? Because you're not going to get old Russell Wilson. So, but it also doesn't. It would behoove you to avoid the drama and the controversy by kind of dialing back the Fields expectations. And I think honestly, for as much as he might have shined early in camp, I also think that he's still not quite acclimated himself, and this is a realistic read on what's going on. And with a couple of weeks left before the season starts, they got to get their house in order, and they're going to do that by starting with saying, "Look, this is Russ's team."
Yeah, I think they have to do that because the buzz with Fields was like the way his teammates were talking about him, right? And like they're more excited by Fields. And one of the problems,
but we all know that like Russell Wilson's not the guy that everybody in the locker room likes.
But that's what I'm saying. Of course, he's brutal. But you know why it worked in Seattle is because he was balling out. So you'd be like, okay, there's a threshold for this. You can deal with more annoyances.
Unless you ask Richard Sherman. If you ask Richard Sherman.
Yes, of course. But that's what I'm saying. When Russell Wilson was good and his team was like a Super Bowl contender, in fact, Super Bowl favorites, his teammates were like, oh, we can't stand this guy. Like, we can barely be around this dude. We're still going to trash this guy. How many times does that happen with a quarterback? It's like, I'm blanking on the Eagles guy's name, Carson Wentz. It's like he's that level of seemingly not embraced by his teammates and a higher level of cringe, and yet he's even more in the public eye and gets even more credit than a guy like Wentz ever did. And that drove Eagles players and people around the scenes nuts. Was like they won a Super Bowl and Wentz was still the guy people were talking about instead of the dudes that were doing it. And so, yeah, I just, with Wilson being not loved in the best of times, it's just really hard for me to see how this is going to play out where he keeps that starting job for more than a few weeks over Fields. Because like you said, I think I can tell you what Steelers fans are going to get. They're going to get what the bar you mentioned. He'll be better than Mason Rudolph. He'll be better than Kenny Pickett. Mm-hmm. The gap between him and those guys, though, I think might be smaller than even a Steelers fan expects it to be.
Yeah, the expectation is pretty low. I don't disagree with that necessarily, but I also, look, as somebody who grew up going to a lot of Browns games as a kid, because it's just where I'm from, my family had tickets. I sat and listened to them always call for the backup quarterback for years until the backup quarterback came in. They were all happy for about 15 minutes, and then they realized that he stunk too. Yeah. And I think that what you might find in the Steelers this year is a Russell Wilson who's aging and not any better, and a Justin Fields who still isn't, near his potential.
Oh, I'm with that. That's right. The reps. No, that's where I'm at with it too. I don't think either guy is magically good. Again, that does not sound a thing to me. I think they both stink. No. It's just a matter of, I think that they'll at least go with the guy who stinks, but the team likes, if that makes sense. Like, that's it. Unless Russell, I don't know what
who can run.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's got a plus skill set. I don't know what Wilson's plus skill set is anymore. Is it still the deep ball? I guess if he has time. Sure. I don't know if they're going to be able to protect him enough to do it. And I think that he's still in his mind, watching him with Denver, you could see why he pissed off Sean Payton so much with the sacks he takes is because he's not the same athletic guy. And he still does tries to buy time in the open space with those little turnaround moves to try to get those, throws down the field. And it's not there for Wilson anymore. And without that, I don't think that there's a plus thing anymore. Okay, so last Steelers thing, you wrote about Tomlin using Madden to help him prepare for the new kickoff format. And I thought this was especially cool because, to me, the kickoff thing is going to be very interesting. I'm setting myself up with a low bar where I think most teams are going to go conservative. They're going to kick it out of bounds. They're going to try and see how this thing plays out with other teams. They don't want to be the one that gets gashed multiple times. You don't want to be the team that gets wildcatted, where... oh, crap, Ronnie Brown has 4 touchdowns today. We got embarrassed. This is forever. So you don't want that to happen, so probably more conservative. But the teams that are preparing for it, there's got to be a couple of renegade teams out there that go, no, we actually feel like we do have a strategy that we're going to unveil. Maybe it is the guy that is using Madden to try to see how this is all going to work out. But, yeah, where are you at versus coaches being innovative with this new format versus the level of conservatism that we're probably going to see?
I think it's going to evolve over time. And right now, based on seeing it live from the Hall of Fame game and trying to pay attention to what guys away from the ball we're doing, to where we are, going into preseason week 2, we've already seen it kind of develop a little bit. I saw somebody rip off a nice little run in the game last night, just based on the fact that they followed their blockers. It's a whole different process for these people returning kicks than it used to be because everything's static. And it's more all right, we're running a trap, but we're running a trap where I have to clear 20 yards just to get to the hole instead of 3 as a running back or something like that. Mm-hmm. And what you're going to see is more teams get adventurous. And they're going to try new things, and it's going to change in body type size from small to big, and everybody's going to try to match each other. And all that's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of guys get to about the 26, 27-yard line pretty consistently, and then one's going to pop. And everyone's going to turn and find the one that pops for a touchdown. And they're going to try to mimic that. And then another one's going to pop eventually, and they're going to try to mimic that. And it's just, the copycat league continues. But I do think that it's really cool to test it in a video game, because I'm somebody who plays a lot of Madden in college football 25, and I fire up Madden this week for the first time, and I'm like, oh yeah, they got the kickoff in here. Oh yeah, I remember I did write about that 2 weeks ago.
Oh, it's a shame you didn't have it then.
I'm going to try it out.
It's a shame you didn't have it then, so that you could feel like you were doing coach talk with an NFL coach,
no,
but about
I did.
Madden? Oh, you did?
I had it. I had it prior to all of that. Yeah, I was. I was even out at EA testing the game in May, testing both of them with them, and I was like, "This is very cool. This is very unique, and it's a lot different, but it's very cool." And it's actually evolved in the game of Madden itself compared to where it was in May and where it was in June in the beta test. So I think you're going to see a similar thing happen in the NFL where they're just going to, over time, it's going to evolve because they're just going to be watching each other and they're going to start to figure things out the more data they get. Because this is something they didn't have any raw data on to begin with.
Mm-hmm. That would be a great feeling, though, to be on the same page with an NFL head coach of like Mike Tomlin's ilk, where you're like, I'm actually the expert here with the Madden. Do you have any questions for me, Mike? He's like, actually, yes. Can we go into my office and fire up the Madden? God, that would have been great. Okay, two more things. One, are you more interested in Aiyuk sweepstakes or Reddick drama?
That's tough. I think Reddick drama because the guy already got traded once, and I'm still flabbergasted at the idea of like you would acquire somebody like that and not work out a contract with him immediately, or even try to, and just tell him, hey, look, we traded for you, and this is the deal that you're keeping. And the reason that you wanted to be traded in the first place was because of the money, and we know that. But guess what? You're on our team now, and we're not going to change that for you. That just kind of blows my mind that you would do that because now you have very little leverage if you want to move him again. The Aiyuk thing for me, the reason I don't pick it is because I'm honestly just tired of it.
Yes.
I think that we have inflated his value slightly. I think he's had a couple of really solid years, but he also plays in an offense with George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, and I think that sometimes it's been a product of, hey, look, he's a developing receiver who's gotten a lot better, and you can't cover everyone. And I think he has a very special rapport with Brock Purdy. So I look at it always as the team acquiring perspective. I try to look at it from the team trading and then the team acquiring. And if I'm a team acquiring and I'm seeking him, I don't know if I really give up the high value capital that everybody thinks he's worth, and then the contract to boot. I just don't. I could think of other players, like the Browns were rumored to, potentially be throwing Amari Cooper in there. If I'm the Browns, I probably want Amari Cooper over Brandon Aiyuk because I know what I'm getting in Amari Cooper. It's not that the ceiling isn't any higher because it is with Aiyuk because he's younger, but from the Browns' perspective, I know what I'm getting in Amari Cooper. And then I think about a Steelers deal, and I'm like, if you really want to get that to happen, get that to work. I mean, this is not what was tossed out there as a projected deal, but in my head, I've always thought, well, you got to send him a receiver, and the only receiver, worth something significant is George Pickens, and then you're caught between deciding between George Pickens and Brandon Aiyuk. And frankly, I'd probably like to see what could happen with George Pickens first. So I feel like it's a little bit overblown, and he's probably in his best situation possible with the 49ers, and I hope that they work out a deal. And I think it's taken way too long for us to go through all this, but that is what happens, in July and into August. We overblow a lot of different things from time to time.
It's definitely the Reddick thing to me just because, again, it's fun to take shots at fans of tortured franchises. And so everybody who has a Jets buddy, you got to send that story to and go like classic Jets. But the reaction I got back from most was like, meh, who cares? Like, and it's like, yeah, he's Haason Reddick and he's replacing a couple of pass rushers there. He probably actually has more import than some of them making seem. But yeah, I am more interested in seeing how that one shakes out. Like the Aiyuk story, for it to have lasted this long and to have had so many different like weird chapters where it's like, oh, and the Patriots, but he doesn't want to go there because he wants to be on a good team. I'm like, oh my God. The only thing that I've gathered from the Aiyuk situation is that he seems to be like a very delusional guy, and that alone is something where if I was the acquiring fan, I'm like, I'm good here. Like I don't. They always say like there's nothing worse than like the dumb guy who doesn't know he's dumb or he thinks he's smart. And I would think the same thing is for receivers or skill position players where it's like, I think I'm a superstar, but really you might just be really good. And that's kind of terrifying.
And that's part of our problem, though. This is also like part of our fault because we spend all this time talking about it, and like giving them the attention. We've been talking about the 49ers potentially moving a receiver since the draft when they selected Ricky Pearsall. And at the time, it was like, well, Debo's gone. No, it turns out it's Aiyuk. Yeah. So we are kind of responsible for it.
Yeah, fine. You know what? I don't accept that responsibility that you tried to foist upon me. I don't accept. This wasn't my fault. I just brought it up. This is my first time. I just dabbled in this. Okay, yeah, last one again. You are a Browns guy. There's a lot of Browns fans here in Toronto. We got a Browns bar. You're welcome to come up anytime. Still no Chubb. Limited view of Watson. What's your confidence level right now in an offense that is going to be, above competent?
Well, yeah, that's the crazy thing about growing up around here and then moving away for 5-6 years and then coming back and all that is it kind of takes some of this job itself has taken all the fandom out of me. Let's be honest. But the beauty of it is in a situation like this, I can analyze with my eyes and not my heart, as I do with every team and especially this team. And right now, I think it still all comes down to the quarterback. Confidence level with this team there's a lot of reasons. And if you look beneath the surface, there's a lot of reasons to be like, well, I think that could be a fatal issue there. You've changed offensive coordinators. Kevin Stefanski is still, the guy in charge of the offense, but Ken Dorsey did not run the ball well, in a traditional format in Buffalo when he was there. I don't know how that bodes for Nick Chubb. I saw their last preseason game, and they didn't look like they had much of it together. Obviously, you're playing with a lot of backups and everything else, but they just didn't seem to be very organized or, didn't execute well, no matter who was playing quarterback. So I think there's going to be some kinks in that system. You lose your offensive line coach and Bill Callahan in the offseason. That's a bigger loss than anybody's really paying attention to. And I don't think that a defense that was tops in the league in yards allowed last year is going to be able to replicate that so easily, even if they do have, pretty much every player back there and revamp their linebacking core and could be better on paper, because a lot of the way that they did that last year was they had a favorable schedule in certain situations and were able to post shutouts and absolutely dominate a few teams, one of them being the Clayton Tune-led Arizona Cardinals, who they only made one start last year, and it was with, the Cardinals in that game against the Browns. So it's also the toughest division in football. And then you're also dependent on a quarterback who has yet to prove that he is worth all that money you gave him, 5 years, $230 million fully guaranteed. So having said that, if most things go right, they should be in contention for the AFC North and probably back in the playoffs. It's just that it's really hard to get everything to go right in a season that is that long, and one of them being health. And I just need to see the quarterback make it through the full season healthy and also demonstrate that he's worth, even a portion of that money, because it all rides on his shoulder.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Nick Shook, right at frontandfield.com. Thanks again for making time, man. This was fun.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, man.